change hurts. Growing requires courage. But what few realize is that the greatest resistance to transformation does not come from the external world. It comes from within. It comes from the ego. And here's the truth that almost no one wants to admit. You are not stuck because you lack strength. You are stuck because there is a part of you that does not want to change. That part is your ego. The ego hates change. And not because it is lazy or stupid, but because it was created to protect you from pain. The problem is that it does this in the most primitive way possible, by avoiding anything that threatens the identity structure it has built, even if that identity is suffocating you. You see, the ego sustains itself on certainties. It needs to believe it knows who you are, how the world works, what to expect from people. It constructs narratives, stories, explanations, many of them false, just to keep everything under control. And when you start to question these truths, the ego panics. Because changing means admitting that perhaps you have lived a lie. That perhaps much of what you believed to be you was just adaptation. It was just survival. Carl Jung spoke about this process in depth. He said that the ego must be decentered for the self, the true center of the psyche, the totality of being, to emerge. And this does not happen smoothly. It is a collapse, a direct confrontation with the shadow, with everything you have rejected, denied, or buried within yourself. That's why so many people flee from self-knowledge, because knowing oneself is not a peaceful stroll through illuminated landscapes. It's a descent into the underground. It's facing chaos. And the ego knows this. It knows that if you truly delve deep, if you look at yourself with brutal honesty, it will lose control. That's why it sabotages. It creates distractions, dramas, rationalizations, resistances. It says, it's not the right time. You're not ready. This is nonsense. It prefers that you remain unhappy, but predictable, rather than risk discovering who you really are. The fear of change is, in fact, the fear of the death of the ego. Because for the new to be born, the old must die. And the ego fears this process like a cornered animal. It will do anything to keep you tied to the old version of yourself, even if that version is killing you inside. But here's the secret. The ego only has power as long as you believe it is you. The moment you start to observe it, to question it, to dismantle its narratives, something greater awakens within you. Something deeper, more authentic, more free. And it is this something greater that Jung called the self. The true center of the psyche, the point where all parts meet and integrate. But to get there, you need to traverse the chaos. You need to descend to the foundation, break with the illusions, confront what has been repressed. In the next part, we will talk exactly about this. How to break free from this prison and begin the path of integration. The ego will resist. But if you have courage, you may, for the first time, taste real freedom. Now that you have seen the prison, the inevitable question is how to escape. How to stop being a hostage to a fragile, controlling, and fearful ego. The answer is not to destroy it, but to place it in its rightful place. The ego should not be eliminated. It should be integrated. And for Carl Jung, this is the true goal of the individuation process, to become a whole human being. But do not be deluded. This path requires more than reading and reflection. It demands a direct confrontation with what you have avoided your entire life. Because everything you have suppressed, your traumas, your wounds, your unresolved emotions, is alive within you. They have merely been pushed into the unconscious, where they act as invisible forces. And as long as you do not bring them to light, you will continue to live on autopilot, repeating patterns you do not understand. sabotaging your own steps. The first move is brutally honest self-questioning. Stop hiding behind justifications. Ask yourself, who am I without the roles I play? Who are you when no one is watching? Who are you without the filters, without the masks, without the need to please or defend yourself? This is the beginning of the deconstruction of the ego. It will resist. It will call you weak. It will say you are exaggerating, that you do not need this. But keep going, because this discomfort is the symptom that something real is moving within you. Then comes the work with the shadow. And no, this is not something spiritualized or overly symbolic. This is deep psychology. It is recognizing that you feel anger, envy, jealousy, pride, neediness, vanity. Everything you have been conditioned to repress. And here is the key point. Your shadow is not your enemy. It is a part of you that has been abandoned. And everything that is rejected eventually takes revenge in the form of uncontrolled impulses, self-destructive behaviors, and invisible sabotages. You need to learn to dialogue with your shadow, to embrace it without judgment, to listen to what it wants to say. It is the portal to your vital energy, your creativity, your emotional truth. Ignoring it is the same as living with half a soul. Jung said that integration happens when you stop trying to be good and start being whole, when you embrace not only the light, but also the darkness. And from this encounter, something new is born. The self, a deeper center than the ego, wiser, quieter, an inner presence that does not need approval, comparison, or control because it simply is. And that's enough. But how to cultivate this connection? The path is not external. It is not found in ready-made formulas or miraculous gurus. It is in silence, in self-study, in therapy, in honest writing, in observing your own dreams. It is in the courage to dive into yourself without guarantees that you will come out unscathed, because you won't. But what will be destroyed is not you. It is the illusion of who you thought you were. And as you traverse this journey, you begin to see the ego as it truly is. A servant, not a master. A tool, not an identity. You put it in the back seat. And for the first time, it is your essence that guides, no longer your insecurity. But before concluding, there is something that still needs to be said. Because even after all this process of awareness, many fall back into the trap of the ego. Do you know why? Because they forget that the ego is cunning. It disguises itself even as spirituality. And that is what we will talk about in the last part. How to keep the ego in its rightful place, and how to transform your relationship with it forever. We have reached the most important point of this journey, understanding that the ego does not need to be destroyed. It just needs to be put in its place. The ego is not the absolute villain of your story. It is merely a character that took on the leading role out of fear of disappearing. But you were not made to live under the command of fear. You were made to live in alignment with your essence. The ego is necessary. It organizes your identity, helps you function in the world, and protects you from real dangers. But it cannot be the leader. When the ego leads, your life becomes a theater. Your relationships turn into transactions. Your emotions become symptoms. Your mind becomes a prison. And the worst part, you start to confuse survival with fulfillment. But when the ego is relegated to the role of servant, when you stop following it blindly and begin to observe its maneuvers with clarity, something new happens. You stop reacting. You start responding. You begin to choose. You start to create. Emotional chaos transforms into clarity. The pain does not disappear, but it stops dominating you. The need to please, to win, to prove, simply loses its meaning. You begin to act from a different center, quieter, deeper, more true. It is the self taking the helm. And when that happens, you no longer need to pretend to be someone, because you are. But be careful. The ego does not vanish. It does not die. It adapts. It will try to hide behind new masks: spirituality, intellectuality, authenticity, performance. It will want to convince you that now you are enlightened, that you have understood everything, that you no longer need to question yourself. Be wary of that. Whenever you think you have arrived, ask yourself, who is speaking now? Is it the self, or is it the ego in a new disguise? The work of integration is ongoing. There is no final point. There is no arriving. There is presence. There is internal vigilance. There is humility to keep descending, even when the whole world is trying to pull you back to the surface. And if you have made it this far, it is because you are ready for this. Ready to stop living on autopilot. Ready to face discomfort as a portal for growth. Ready to place the ego where it should be, in service of the soul. Now tell me, what have you discovered about yourself throughout this video? Which part resonated the most? Leave a comment below. This is not just about engagement, it is about making conscious what you felt. Writing is a way to integrate. And don't forget, if this made sense to you, keep watching the next video. It is just as important as this one. The journey does not end here. In fact, it is just beginning.